Still trying to herd all those ducks into a nice neat row before you get started with your business or project? Maybe you've already started, but your fear is stopping you from up-leveling. Or maybe you've spent your life saying yes to everyone else, but committing to yourself is still on your to-do list. Hi, I'm Claire Barton, and I'm a recovering perfectionist too. Welcome to the show where I share simple, practical, and mindset tips to get you doing work you're passionate about, making the money you want, and spending your time and energy building your dream lifestyle. Hello, recovering perfectionists. It's Claire here, and I'm joined by the lovely Lisa Kniebe. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Claire.
Lovely to meet you. So Lisa is a copy coach and copywriting launch specialist, which absolutely floats my boat and ticks all my buttons because I love all the things around copywriting and I love all the things around launch. So I can't wait for us to have a bit of a chat about you and what you do, and also some of your amazing adventures, which caught my eye on social media, and hence why we've connected.
I can't wait to fill you in and talk, adventure, copy and launching.
All the amazing things. So, Lisa, can you give us a bit of a rundown about who you are and what you do and what your biz journeys looks like thus far and all the other things? Tell us about you as a recovering perfectionist as well.
Oh, thanks, Claire. So I'm originally UK born, came over here after training to be a nurse, and my career journey is really one of those that just can't be nailed down in any small box. So trained as a nurse, decided no, nursing isn't for me, went back to uni, studied, came out with my English literature degree and thought I'd change the world, and actually found people don't pay people to do much with English literature. So I thought, okay, where to from here? A door opened, which was into neonatal intensive care nursing. So I went back into nursing and studied to, look after those preemie babies. And at that point then had my own children. So that was really at the turning point. When I became a stay-at-home mum for a while, I was restless. I loved the role of mothering, but I was restless and I was looking for more. And that's when I started my first business, which was telling stories and selling through stories, importing international sort of art and sculptures and selling those to people, telling the stories of where they came from. And it's only with hindsight that I realized that's what I was doing. At the time, I was just doing what came naturally, telling, sharing these amazing journeys with people. So I went and retrained as a teacher and was in primary school teaching for 5 years and absolutely loved creating, those safe, inclusive communities where children could really thrive. But I came to a crossroads where I had an opportunity to step out and travel with my family for 3 months. We wanted to adventure around the top end of Australia, and I didn't have my long service leave at that time. And so that crossroads was commit to teaching and just leave that traveling dream to one side, or actually hand my notice in, which I was desperately sad to do because permanency was like the holy grail of teaching, and help on the adventure, and off we went. So that's what I did. And during that time I started blogging. I started a travel blog, and at that point I realized that teaching had become, I'd become so consumed with my career as a teacher that I'd forgotten to love and live and really just step outside of those boundaries. And the writing really reconnected me to where I wanted to go. And hence I started then thinking around, if I don't want to go back into teaching, what am I going to do now? I've already been a nurse and I've been a teacher, and most people are really settled and happy with those career options. And now I'm still restless and saying I want more. What's wrong with me? And I started my own business, which was Stella, Polaris Copywriting, and launched into marketing copywriting, and have since then set up my second business, which is Lisa Kniebe Coaching. So that sort of brings me to where I am today.
What an absolutely awesome story. I really love this, when people have stories where they've tried this and they've tried that and they haven't felt like, oh, I've spent 3 years at uni, so I might as well just keep doing this or whatever. Because I think we do, so many people go and get a degree or they get a qualification or they start a career and they feel like if they don't continue with it, it's a waste of time and it's made everything else a waste. But when you get to a point where there's an opportunity of something that you really want, it is really hard, because there's like this social status and this internal yearning for a lot of people to have the stability and the security and the the normality and that sort of thing, but also this sense of adventure. And I know it's something I definitely struggle with, being a bit of an introvert, and I'm a Virgo, and I like to have my ducks in a row, and I like to know what's kind of coming next, and I'm a planner by nature, and I'm an organizer and all that sort of thing. But I also have this big yearning for adventure, and it's a really tricky thing for me. I find also always going like, oh, that sounds like so much fun, but it's really irresponsible and I definitely shouldn't do it. Oh, but it sounds like so much fun. Yeah, but you'll lose a lot of money. Oh, but it sounds like so much fun. Like I have this little, like the things, and often it's probably the decision-making thing and the time that it takes to make a decision that means the opportunity is gone by the time I'm ready to make the decision. So how did you kind of get to that point? You said like there was the option for you to go traveling and hand your notice in and whatnot. How did you like what happened for you to make you go, yep, here's my letter of resignation. I'm going away for 3 months.
It was one of those. I'm very much a person like you. I have that sort of two sides, the Gemini and the Cancerian in me. So the Gemini just says, let's just do it. And the Cancerian says, yes, but, and looks at all of those, like you say, that safety, that future, but I love this thing. But this time Gemini won out. And it was just a case of, it really was simply a case of saying, this is the only time we as a family could leave and up sticks and go take a term out of school. The kids, I had one son in year 6 and one in year 8, and I just felt like as soon as we moved into that next year, because the school said, if you wait a year, we can give you this unpaid leave. And it really is one of those sliding doors moments, because had I waited a year, I look back and I think, would I still be in teaching now? Where would I be now? But there was no waiting. It was, now is the time, the only time. And it was that commitment to, what's the love of your life is the family, and it's a case of what can I do with them, how will this change our lives at home, and how will teaching versus continuing with a career that was that stable option. So yeah, it really was just a leap of faith, and it was painful. I have to say, it was painful to hand in my notice on a job I loved and leave a class that I'd nurtured. I had 6 months in that year, and I had a class that were like, Mrs. Kniebe, don't leave us. They were only like year 4s, and it was like, oh. So
what have I done?
Yeah, and I found they took a while. It took me at least the first 2 to 3 weeks of that road trip for my class to move out of my head, and for my own kids to find the space back inside there, because you really absorb everyone else's needs. So
absolutely, I've got goosebumps all over, because I totally feel that when you something. I think as well, when you love the job that you're doing and you're not leaving because you don't get along with your boss or because you don't like the work anymore or whatever. It's a bittersweet, isn't it? Because it's a beautiful thing to be able to leave somewhere not on bad terms, but also getting away from it and realizing how you said before how involved you were with your career and how much that actually becomes all the things that you kind of think about and worry about and whatnot. So that's really awesome. Absolutely. And so what happened for you while you were on this 3-month thing? It was obviously not your very first adventure. You sound like you've had a very adventurous life leading up to that as well. But what, once you'd made that commitment and you started doing the travel and that sort of thing, what happened, from that for you?
So the blogging, I'd never really heard of blogging up to that point. So this is 2014. And I started to think, well, we're going to be off-road. We were traveling on dirt roads around the outback. So we were super remote and we wouldn't have contact with people. So I just wanted a way to be able to journal our way around, but also for our UK family and Australian friends to actually see what we were doing, share the photos and share the fun. And so I started this blog on Blogger and just sort of learned, the basics of the tech and put it together. And as we went, I found that initially it was, let's do the thing. And then, the kids had to write a diary every night because that was part of their homeschooling. And I would write my blog, they'd write their diary. And suddenly I found that, we got about a month into it and I was just loving the blogging. And it was around the storytelling aspect. So I found that I thought I'd be writing about the places we saw and the cultural things, but actually we were always really, the real story was in the family's interaction in amongst those things. So it was, how my husband's a real, loves military precision and order, and how me and the kids are really quite chaotic. And there'd always be little issues with who hadn't zipped something up or who hadn't done this. And so there was all the little fun stuff. And that was, I then started getting messages from people when we got into Wi-Fi. Messages would come in and it would be like, where's your next blog post? And that's when I realized, oh, someone's reading these.
Oh, it's a thing.
Yeah.
I made a thing.
Yeah. And I realized that it's not actually, it's always a story about the people. And that's what brings it to life. It's what brings anything to life. So yeah, and from there once we came home, I thought I knew I wanted to jump into that writing, and I started another blog, but this time with a bit more savvy, like, oh, I know what this blogging thing is, and I think I'm going to do something with it. And I started a parenting blog called Mummy to Mum, which I set out to talk about what it's like to move from, because on that road trip, it was a real moment where I moved from being a mummy, as little kids call you mummy, to literally the kids very consciously made a decision that they were too old to use mummy anymore, and they were going to call me mum. And those two letters that got chopped off literally felt like I'd lost an arm and a leg. Totally. I was like, what is going on with my world? I'm mummy. And the identity shift that occurred in moving from mummy to mum was such a big one that it was the mileage in that blog. It was that internal discussion around, what does this mean? And is my whole identity based on being mummy? Who am I outside of that? So yeah, that's where I came back to.
I'll just be over here crying. We were just chatting before we started recording about the difference between my kids are little, your kids are teenagers now, and it's like, it just terrifies me not being needed as much as I'm like, go and tie your own shoelaces. One day they won't want me to tie their shoelaces, and even that is devastating to me. So, gosh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I always remember one of the poignant blogs that kind of got published elsewhere was one that said, you always know the firsts, but you never know the last.
Yep.
The last time they'll be big enough to be picked up in your arms. You don't know when that last time occurs until hindsight. And it was one of those moments that you realize that literally every single day has to count, because you never know when that was the last time that thing was going to happen, which can be a bit depressing, but actually can be quite an exciting way to live, because you've got to fill every day with the fun you want to have.
Oh, stop. I'm going to start bawling my eyes out.
Yeah, too early for that.
Oh gosh, totally. But no, totally. I really get what you're saying. I am massive on ceremony and that sort of thing. Like, if it's going to be the last or the first, I want to party and I want everyone to know about it, and I want to write it down in my journal, and I want, all the things. And something that I've had to really get over is going, oh my gosh, and I realized it probably, I don't know, a year and a half or maybe a year ago. My son, who's 6.5, came out. I was doing some work on the couch. He came out, he wasn't feeling well, and he fell asleep on me. And it was only then that I realized, God, it's probably been a year and a half since he's fallen asleep on me, and I hadn't even noticed that the last one had even happened. And I'm like, oh my God. And it kind of threw me into a bit of a tailspin as well. But yeah, like you said, I guess the turnaround of that is going, well, it could be. And we always talk about it could be your last day. And especially when, there's people in our world who get sick, or they pass away suddenly or not suddenly or whatever. And it just makes you think, like, God, let's reevaluate what's really important. But from that sort of point of view as well, going, it's not necessarily the last time I'm ever going to see you, but it's the last opportunity, could be the last opportunity for this beautiful connective experience and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Calm myself down over here. So something I would love I'd love to hear the story, I'm sure everyone else would as well, is your Kilimanjaro trek with your kids. Like, what? Tell us about that.
Oh, so I found when I became a mum that I was really adventurous in my teens and in my 20s, and then I became a mum in my late 20s, and I found that really brought out, my protective mother stance, right? And I reined in adventure in my life. I just felt like it didn't feel like a safe thing for me to do. I was too precious and couldn't risk myself because my kids needed me, and I couldn't risk my kids. So when about 5 years ago, when my husband, who never seemed to suffer from that issue at all, suddenly said, I've got a family adventure. This was, it must have been just around the time that we were planning our traveling around Australia. I was like, that's enough. That's really satisfying. No, we're going to go, let's go to Africa and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And, you know, initially I was like, what's Mount Kilimanjaro? You know, and when I realized what it was, I was like, not a chance. I remember saying distinctly to him and us and having one of those falling outs of like, no way, no, you can do that by yourself. That's not for me. And that's not for the kids. So it really, I find it a fascinating turnaround to the point where we talked about it over time. I put it on my vision board for about 2 years running because I knew it was something I wanted to grow into. I didn't want to let go of the me that was the adventurous me pre-kids. I wanted to bring her back, but I just didn't know how to get past that fear of you know, it wasn't going to be safe. So you know, I put it on my vision board. I grew into the goal, and it started to become a reality about 2 years ago, where we actually started planning, realizing the kids would be 15 and 18, so they would be, it felt like an age where they had physical capability, and in fact it turned out, you know, they were far more capable than either of the adults. So yeah, so that was great. And we started training 2018 January. We committed financially to the adventure and started our training. But all of that year, I'm not a particularly, you know, I'm no gym junkie. I'm not a fitness fanatic. In fact, you have to really drag me out to get me doing stuff. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I can't really see myself summiting this mountain, knowing it was 5,895 meters high, and that it was going to be super low on oxygen. And everyone, when I watched the YouTube videos, everyone looks super young and super fit and toned. And I'm just like, that is so not me. So I just trained really hard. And every time I trained, I felt like I'm still not getting anywhere. I'm still out of breath, and I'm still at sea level. So once we got out to Africa, it was very much a case, and I think we talked about that imperfect action. It was just, I'm going to just do this anyway and commit to the journey. And I'm trying to forget all the time, and that perfectionist element around, I want to, you know, not just win, but I want to get to the summit. Like, will this whole journey be meaningful if I don't summit? How will I make it meaningful? Because it almost felt like a failing if you didn't summit, because the whole trip was about that. So on that very first day, when the first day was almost my worst day, where I struggled, I had to stop, and you know, it was just a nightmare. And I could see the kids looking at me thinking, oh no, she's not going to make it. And I thought, then I'm committing to just being present in every single moment of every single day, so that's my journey, and wherever that begins and ends will be what it is.
That is everything that you've just said then about not being a gym junkie and like dragging you out and all that sort of thing is really totally me, exactly. And I feel like I was also very adventurous and like lots of fun, and the, you know, one who was kind of leading the way of doing all the fun stuff. And same thing when I became a mum, I just got really scared about stuff, and I was really scared about something happening to me and not being there for the kids, and all something happening to kids and blah blah blah, all that sort of thing. And I think the beautiful thing about the two things is, when you commit to just being present and to enjoying the journey, no matter what the outcome is, you kind of let go of all that shit, because it doesn't really matter what happens as long as you're there and you're enjoying it. Like the outcome, we're so focused on, so attached on a certain outcome usually, that it actually makes the journey feel like harder work than it really needs to be, or feel like it was, I don't know, just the pre-thought but not actually part of the thing, right?
Yeah.
And if you know, all of the things that you've just said about committing to being present and committing to just, you know, like opening up and seeing what happens and that sort of thing, being there for the kids and whatnot, if you apply that just to Monday to Friday / Saturday and Sunday, like whether you're doing climbing Mount Kilimanjaro or just doing life, it's kind of what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that journey and that experience made such a huge change in my life. internally that when I came back and that processing and reflection of first of all, there's the elation, because putting one foot in front of the other for 8 days does actually take you to the top of a mountain.
Sure.
So that there's the elation, but also then there's the processing of what did that mean for me, and why was it of such great significance. And I realized that we're all climbing mountains, no matter what they are, and really that adventurous mindset, you don't have to be having an adventure like Kilimanjaro or like traveling to the top end. You actually bring the adventurous mindset to the table every day. It's in you. And so it's that shift within you that says, yes, if we think what is adventure, it's that sense of being open to change, being prepared to take risks, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's all of those things. And if you think about our business mindset, that's what we really need to bring to the table every single day. So that's why I think the experience has been so profound. Yeah.
One foot in front of the other. And one foot in front of the other is such a big one. And I think something that I've certainly struggled with, and I think a lot of people who would identify as a recovering perfectionist, is the risk-taking thing. Like, how much risk are you willing to take? And obviously on any day it's a little bit different, and on any certain situation or decision it can be a little bit different and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about, feeling the fear and doing it anyway, but also going, actually, I'm okay with taking this little bit of risk, because, I mean, for me, risk is about having somewhere safe to land. So if I feel like there's some of the stuff's kind of, here in place, and I've often talked about it, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I typically, and in the past, haven't been great with surprises or change or all that sort of thing. Like, I like to know what's kind of coming next. I'm not so bad anymore. Not so much that way anymore. But when I traveled, typically I wouldn't do any of that sort of thing. I had my Lonely Planet guide in my hand, and I'd just rock up at the train station and work out where to go next. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to plan everything. I didn't need to have everything organized, which seems ridiculous because that's, that was high risk, and you might not have somewhere to sleep tonight, but I had safety nets. I had my passport, my visa, and my URL, and my hidden cash, and my credit card, and my, all these, like, I had everything else kind of organized so that there was like a safety net. If shit did hit the fan, it wasn't going to hit the fan that badly, sort of thing. So for me, it's probably a bit of the same with life and also with my business and that sort of thing, that I'm happy now to take some of these risks and to put it out there, partly because it's a trust the process thing. I've done it often enough with things that were safe enough, and then kind of gradually worked up to things that were a bit more actually risky, to go, oh, it did work and that was awesome, or it didn't work and no one died, so let's just get on with it and do the next thing. Like, do you know what I mean? It's actually that process that you've got to kind of test the waters a little bit first, and do the small adventure-y risky things to give yourself the confidence to do the next size up one, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and I think sometimes we overthink risk. So when we feel afraid, we'll try and rationalize through, it won't kill me, it won't this, it won't that. But actually, really, we're often just paralyzed with fear. Literally, just that paralysis sets in. And sometimes the only way to overcome that, I think, is just blind faith and action. So it's like, I'm going to just do the thing. Everybody else says I should do the thing, so I'm just going to do it, and I'm not going to think about it, because if I stand here thinking about it, there'll probably be 100 reasons not to.
Out of it.
And it was an absolute classic moment on Kili, where I was literally straddled over a 300-foot drop, and I was hands around what was called kissing rock, because you had to get so close to it, you're practically kissing it. And it was that critical moment where you had to find the courage to just take the step. And I really felt that. I mean, I think we've all had that, especially if you're, a speaker, or you're walking out into a stage scenario or something, and you've got that paralysis, that freezing cold moment that sets in, and you're feeling absolutely stuck. And the only thing you can do is take the next step, take that action, because no rational person would do that. So you just do it anyway.
And so, Lisa, does that stuff come purely from internal, do you think? Like, just going, just do it, just take the step, just go and do the thing, just go and it's okay, we'll be fine? Or is there other external things that you find help you with accountability, or having other people supporting you, or competition, or like what other stuff outside of your own head kind of helps you, if anything?
Definitely having your team. So like the people that champion you, that's so important. So whenever I've had those big moments, I think sometimes you need people to believe in you before you get there, if you know what I mean, before you believe in yourself. Because one of the things I know for sure is that our self-belief is a bit of a luxury, and we can't always afford to wait for it to kick in. So we have to believe, we have to know we can do the thing and try to do it anyway. And when we get there, self-belief kind of catches up. But you needed the people that champion you to say, you can do it, we believe in you, let's go. And the encouragers. So obviously on the mountain for me, that was my family. But in business, that's often my, your cheer squad, the people that have got your back, that really see bigger things than you can see for yourself. So that's definitely something, I surround myself with those people. And needless to say, also having that a map, I suppose. So like on Killy, it was literally a map, but having a loose plan. So I'm all for having a goal and a plan, but also I say fix the goal, but don't fixate on it. So when we're talking about getting outcomes focused and just feeling like we're missing the journey because we're so focused on the outcome. If you don't know where you're going, if we think about Killy, if I didn't know where I was going, I'd still be on that mountain wandering around now, right? So you have to know where you're going, but you also don't want to become so fixated that that's all you think about. So I think you need a loose plan, fixing a goal, and the cheer squad that really keep you motivated. One other thing I thought was really insightful was that I always, in the copywriting, there's quite a lot of, you'll hear about fear-based copywriting and people using pain points to, really help people make decisions. I've often felt a sort of internal struggle around, does that feel ethical? Does that feel right? As a nurse, I'm all about alleviating your pain, not putting my finger in it and pressing it.
Does this hurt? Does this hurt?
Is that a bruise? Let me press it a bit harder. It's like, no, that goes against my nature. What I've found is that it was fear that motivated me, fear that got me off the couch, fear that got me outside, and fear became my, almost like the ignition to success. And it was really interesting to flip that fear equation around.
That's really interesting. I think I have this conversation with people quite a lot because I obviously work with content quite a lot and that sort of thing in my business as well. And I think I totally agree. I don't like pushing bruises and that sort of thing, but sometimes there's this connection, and I totally agree, because sometimes it's like, I don't really know what I want, but I sure as hell know that I don't want this thing. So that is enough to make me a little bit, to make the taking of the risk, I suppose, feel like a better option, rather than sitting around continuing to allow something that I don't want, or whatever, other analogy there is with that. So it's definitely a balance when you're in anything to do with mindset or your content or your messaging and all of that sort of thing, to acknowledge what the shitty things are and acknowledge what the negative stuff is, not to harp on about it and carry on and make people feel shit about it, but to kind of, I think it is, you said it was the ignition to your success, and I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because it definitely puts a fire in my belly when I'm like, whoa, well, this doesn't feel very good, I'm getting out of here. Whatever that kind of looks like. It's really interesting, isn't it?
And I think that was it. I really reconciled with fear at that point, because it was like, fear can actually be your friend. So it's just the way we use it. We use it with sincerity and integrity. As a writer, we can actually things change when we feel the sense of what we don't want.
Absolutely. And when you can recognize and have the courage to go, definitely don't want that. Okay, got to get out. Talk a lot about values and that sort of thing, and it can be very liberating when you actually connect with your values. But the problem is that you can then see all the gaps of where your life isn't aligned to your values, and that is scary as hell, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and once you see it, you've got to make some changes, and that can be really scary. So anyway, that's a conversation for another day. Lisa, I have absolutely loved this conversation, and I'm so inspired by your amazing story and your courage and your adventuring and your mothering and all of those sort of things. So I'll definitely be staying in touch. And how can we stay in touch? How can anyone who's listening find you? Apart from all the links and show notes, but obviously is there an easy place to connect with you?
I'm pretty active on Facebook. So my Facebook page is Lisa Kniebe Words That Shine. And that's where I tend to hang out and share a lot of my content and, have the conversations that I love to have. So that would be a really great place to make contact.
Yay.
Oh, thanks so much,
Awesome.
Claire. It's been an awesome conversation.
Oh, it really has. I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I'm sure we'll connect again at some point in the future. Awesome. All right, lovely. Awesome to chat with you. And I will, see you on the flip side. Thanks for coming on The Recovering Perfectionist.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya.